Welcome to Too Fond of Books. My name is Janelle, and today I am ranking Jane Austen screen adaptations. I am a sucker for anything Jane Austen on the screen. It can be a movie, it can be a TV movie, it can be a TV miniseries. I don't care, I love it. Usually. So I am going to be ranking the Jane Austen adaptations that I have seen, and there are 31 of them. And I'm going to start at 31 and go down to 1. But as I was doing this, I realized that this isn't enough, because there could be a show that I liked right underneath a show that I really did not like. So I decided what I would also do is give them grades like we got in school. So A, B, C, D, and F. And I am going to post those so you can see them on the screen for these movies, so that you can see, you know, let's say the B's. Within the B's, how do I rank those? And I think it's just extra helpful for kind of explaining how I like the shows. So there's 31 of these, so let's just dive right in. Coming in at number 31, my least favorite Jane Austen screen adaptation ever, Persuasion 2022. This gets an F from me. Okay, but let's start with the positives. Richard E. Grant. He was great as Sir Walter Elliot. He was fantastic. I really like him as an author, and I liked that they included the shrubbery bit where he's worried about, when people are renting their house, he's worried about his shrubberies, and I always found that hilarious in the book, so I love that they included it in the movie. And that's it for positives. I'm not a fan of modern day sensibilities in a period piece, and that's my biggest problem with this movie. Okay, that's not it actually. My biggest problem is Anne. She was all wrong, and when you get Anne wrong, the whole thing falls apart. And honestly, that's what I really didn't like that the most. She was just wrong in this movie. There was also no subtlety at all. Everything was so on the nose. They explained everything, either through text on the screen or characters speaking to the camera or to each other, instead of allowing the story and the characters to breathe and to tell their story. I don't like it when a movie is dumbed down. I don't like dumbing down. I prefer it when a film expects me to keep up, and this one had no such expectations at all. I also felt that they got important plot points wrong. Anne and Wentworth talk way too much in this movie. The whole point in the book is that they can't speak. Not understanding each other or knowing what each other is feeling, that uncertainty makes the end that much more romantic. The other plot points that I thought they got wrong was the conversation between Anne and Wentworth before the Cobb accident. Completely takes away from the important discoveries made by the reactions of everyone to the accident, and is another example of explaining things to the audience. He says to her, "You're so calm in an emergency," rather than showing it through the story. And then Mr. Elliot just blurting out his intentions the minute he meets Anne, I felt like they got that wrong too. Okay, can we talk about the fact that she goes swimming in her gown in the middle of the day? What? Okay. Jane Austen wrote social comedies of manners. These are deeply rooted in the Regency society and rarely work when taken out of it or modernized. And in case you don't know, a comedy of manners is where the set of social conventions of a particular class in a particular time and a particular place. And so, okay, that's enough. Let's move on. Number 30 is Emma, period, from 2020. This gets an F from me as well, unfortunately. What I did like about this movie was the soundtrack. It was surprising in parts with the choral pieces, especially the a cappella version of How Firm a Foundation. That was beautiful. I just felt that they made the characters ridiculous instead of relatable. And that was, I think, my biggest problem with the film, especially Mr. Woodhouse. I think they got him wrong. Yeah. And Emma, they removed her kindness and made her too arrogant. So I wasn't really a fan of how they played Emma either. They also took out too much of the Jane Fairfax and Frank Churchill story. They focused instead on Harriet and Robert Martin, but the Jane Fairfax Churchill and Frank Churchill subplot is arguably the more important one to the story. So I felt like that was a mistake in the movie. Okay, we are done with those that I am giving Fs. So let's move on. Number 29 is Pride and Prejudice from 2005. This one I have to give a D to. And when I rewatched it for this video, I came up with 3 reasons why. Character choices, etiquette choices, and storytelling choices. So for character choices, I felt like the Elizabeth character just wasn't quite right. She laughs way too much, and I know that she's supposed to laugh, and that's fine. But like, it put her in the category of Kitty and Lydia, I felt, and it took away from her wit. That's just my opinion. Now, I should say this from the get-go. Of course, everything here is just my opinion, and if we disagree, that is totally okay. People like different things. So yeah, and I should also have mentioned at the very beginning, spoilers throughout. Spoilers throughout. Okay. The other character choices that I wasn't a fan of was that they made Mr. and Mrs. Bennet too normal. They had a better relationship, and I thought they got that wrong. And I also didn't like what they did with Darcy either. As far as etiquette choices goes, Bingley visiting Jane in her sick room. Also, the Gardiners wouldn't have left her at Pemberley and gone away. Lady Catherine coming to her at nighttime when everyone was in their pajamas. No, I don't think so. And then Elizabeth going out in her nightdress and Darcy also being so casually dressed. I don't think so. Okay, but storytelling choices I think are the most important here. I felt like the movie wasted time. In an already shortened format, it's a movie, not a miniseries, and I felt like they wasted valuable time. The other storytelling choice that I really did not like was the fact that they almost kissed in the first proposal scene, and I felt like that was all wrong. Darcy, maybe, I doubt it, but Elizabeth definitely not. She really doesn't like him yet. She is still very upset about Jane and Wickham. I didn't see it. It didn't work for me. And then having the first thing that Darcy says upon hearing about Lydia and Wickham, "It's my fault," it takes some of the pressure off of Elizabeth. She's realizing her love for him and should be more worried about what he is thinking and feeling. This is telling her too soon. What I did like, I really liked that first ball scene. It was really crowded and exuberant, and I thought that was really well done. So I don't know if I can't remember if I mentioned it, but that gets a D from me. Coming in at number 28 is Mansfield Park from 1999. This is the one with Frances O'Connor. My biggest problem with this was that it tried to do too much in a movie just under 2 hours. It gives Jane Austen's words to Fanny Price, basically made Fanny Jane Austen, and completely changed her character, and therefore the entire movie. Johnny Lee Miller, though, I'm always a fan of Johnny Lee Miller in Jane Austen adaptations. I don't know what it is, but he is a great hero in Jane Austen movies. But Edmund was played different too, and I wasn't really a fan of that. It did have a fantastic cast, but I also think that it went too far in having Mariah and Henry conduct a full-on affair in her father's house. No. So that gets a D for me as well. Coming in at number 27 is Pride and Prejudice, a latter-day comedy. This one I had to give a D to as well. In this one, it's a modern-day adaptation set in the United States in Utah, and the main characters are roommates, not sisters, and there's no parents in this. Elizabeth works in a bookstore and is a university student. Unfortunately, it was not great acting. So this one was a no from me. Coming in at number 26 is the Jane Austen Book Club. This one gave a C to. It was fine. I watched it last year for Jane Austen July, but I honestly can't really remember very much about it at all. Coming in at number 25 is From Mansfield with Love. I gave this one a C as well. This is a web series, modernized Mansfield Park, that was actually not bad. It was pretty good for a modern day one. There were parts where I didn't really like Fanny's character, but then the other times I did. So yeah, so that one got a C for me. Not bad at all. Coming in at number 24 is Becoming Jane. This is I think a TV movie about Jane Austen and her supposed love affair with Tom Lefroy. This one I also gave a C to because I'm not familiar enough with Jane Austen's life to comment on the accuracy of the film. It had great actors, but it was just not my favorite. The almost elopement that happens in it, I just felt like that went too far because as far as I know, we don't actually really know all that much about Lefroy or his relationship with Jane Austen and how far it went. Coming in at number 23 is Miss Austen Regrets. This is another TV movie about Jane Austen, and it's about how she accepted a marriage proposal from a man, Henry Biggs, maybe? I don't remember his name. But then the very next morning, she took it back and decided not to marry him. So the movie starts with that, and then it goes 12 years later and explores the possibility of whether or not she regretted that decision. This one was okay. I gave it a C as well. It was beautifully shot. The tone was a little sad for me. And I mean, fair enough, that's probably what it was, but coming in at number 22 is I Have Found It. This is an Indian Tamil language film adaptation of Sense and Sensibility that was released in 2000. This is a modern day adaptation. And I gave this one a B. So we're starting now, we're into the ones that I gave Bs to. So these are ones that I liked and I would watch again. It was a pretty good modern adaptation. The song sequence, however, that appeared to be in a Scottish castle, I didn't know what was happening there. And there were so many costume changes during one song. But aside from that, it was a pretty good modern day adaptation of Sense and Sensibility. Coming in at 21 is From Prada to Nada. This is one that I only just discovered. This is another modern day adaptation of Sense and Sensibility set in the United States in Los Angeles, I think, and the family are Mexican Americans, and I thought that it was pretty good. It was a good modern day adaptation. I enjoyed that one. Coming in at 20 is Bride and Prejudice. This one I rewatched for this ranking video, and it's just fun. It is gorgeous and colorful and exuberant. Although at times I found it a tad overstimulating, but I loved that about it. It was a good modern retelling that stays pretty close to the plot. Even on a rewatch though, I was always surprised when they started singing. I just don't watch enough Bollywood to have learned to expect it in that film. And I also have to mention, the first time we meet Wickham, he is coming out of the ocean. He'd been swimming. Very James Bond. And I thought it was interesting they chose to make the Lady Catherine character into Darcy's mom, which made sense to me. I thought that was good. Coming in at number 19 is Pride and Prejudice from 1980. This is a TV miniseries faithful to the book and the characters. I thought it was interesting because this one made a deliberate choice to give Mary Bennet more attention. So for example, the first time that they meet Wickham, he addresses her when they're first introduced and actually has like a brief conversation with her. I was kind of surprised. There is a proposal scene between Collins and Charlotte that is hilarious. And Judy Parfitt plays Lady Catherine. She is Sister Monica Joan from Call the Midwife. She's a great Lady Catherine. Coming in at number 18 is Persuasion from 2007. This one's not bad. It's pretty good. I do rewatch it sometimes, but I did not like the end. I did not like how they had her running like a madwoman through the streets of Bath. I thought that was ridiculous. And then having Wentworth buy Kellynch Hall for her didn't make any sense to me, because I don't know how he could have done that. But anyway, aside from that, it's a pretty good adaptation. Coming in at 17 is Sense and Sensibility from 1981. This one has a sufficiently awful Fanny Dashwood. Interestingly, it had half-hour episodes, which I've never seen a Jane Austen adaptation that did half-hour episodes. There was no Margaret, which is totally fine. I can understand that decision. I really liked the cast and how they played their characters. This was actually a pretty good Sense and Sensibility. Coming in at number 16 is Lost in Austen. This is a modern day time travel Jane Austen adaptation that's just really fun. So you have this modern day girl who loves Pride and Prejudice, and one day she discovers a portal through time, essentially. Upstairs in her bathroom, she can get into the attic at Longbourn, and so they switch places. Elizabeth Bennet switches places with her and she goes back in time, and I thought that it was a really good exploration of how someone would react in that situation, and how she was so desperate to make the story go correctly, but kind of was forgetting that by inserting herself into the story that it was gonna change. And so yeah, that one was just a really fun one. Coming in at number 15 is Mansfield Park from 1983. This one, I think, has the best Fanny Price. The best portrayal of Fanny Price that I've seen on film. I really liked that. The cast was great, and it was really faithful to the book. This one's a really good Mansfield Park. I recommend it. 1983, if you can get a hold of it. TV miniseries. And then the last in the B category at number 14 is Mansfield Park from 2007. This one has Billy Piper and Blake Ritson, I think his name is. This one is fun, and I do enjoy this one, although there are things that aren't perfect about it, which is why it's a B and not an A. The Fanny Price is probably not as meek as she should be. But I just really like that one. Okay, we are now entering the ones that I've given A's to. These are ones that I really like and I rewatch often. Coming in at number 13 is Jane Austen's Emma from 1996. I don't know what it was about 1995 and 1996, but there were 3 Emmas put out in those 2 years, 2 of them in 1996. This one has Kate Beckinsale and Mark Strong. It was adapted by Andrew Davies, and it was a TV movie. This one I just recently rewatched for this video, because it's not one that is easy to get a hold of, and I had watched it years ago, like I think when I was in college, but probably when it came out, and I did enjoy it, and because I remembered it ends with a harvest supper. So every time I was rewatching the Emmas that I had access to, I kept waiting for that scene because I forgot that this was a different movie altogether. But I managed to get a hold of it from the library. Now, what's interesting is the direction that Andrew Davies chose to go when he wrote this one. So the opening scene of this is people stealing chickens. Now, this is in the book, and so I thought that was you know, an interesting way to open the story. It's the only adaptation I've ever seen that has a dark-haired Emma. Totally fine with that. I just think it's interesting that most times when you see Emma, she's got blonde hair for some reason. It has a great cast. But the first fight between Emma and Knightley seemed to come a little too soon. I would have liked to see a bit more of their relationship first. I found Knightley to be a bit fierce. I was a little bit scared of him. I did like her imaginings. She kind of imagined how certain things would play out in the movie. Class issues were really highlighted, which was smart because that's a big part of the book of Emma, is class issues, especially the staff. You see staff a lot more in this film. For example, the number of staff and the effort that they took to provide the picnic to Box Hill was really highlighted, and I thought that was great. Like I said, it ends with a harvest supper, and then the final scene is people stealing chickens again, which I thought was nice symmetry. Coming in at number 12 is Northanger Abbey. This one, the Fanny from Mansfield Park 1983 plays Mrs. Allen, and I thought that was fantastic. This one was well cast and lighthearted and fun, and I just really enjoyed it. Coming in at number 11 is Clueless. As if, okay, I think this is an amazing film. When I rewatched it, I didn't think that I would like a high school movie again. I was actually really nervous to rewatch it because I can no longer watch high school movies. They drive me crazy. But I loved it. Now, that could be because of nostalgia, but I also just think that it is a great film and it is a great modern day adaptation of Emma. It's just brilliant. Coming in at number 10 is Austenland. This one has Kerry Russell, Jennifer Coolidge, and J.J. Field. You've got a Jane Austen superfan who goes over to England to have a vacation in Austenland and to kind of live the Regency lifestyle. I love how they introduce Jane and the plot in just a couple of minutes. I love this quote from Jennifer Coolidge when they are being picked up from the airport. She says, "They even got us a car from the 1800s." I love Jennifer Coolidge. She is so awesome. The soundtrack is a great mix of modern and classic. The owner of the company, though, is so mean to Jane, and I don't understand why, because Jane is a paying guest, and yes, she's there at the lowest level, but she's still a paying guest. But anyway. Okay, coming in at number 9 is Bridget Jones's Diary. I love it, I love it, I love it. And I love that they got Colin Firth to play Darcy. I mean, yeah. That's how you know that it is kind of a modern day adaptation of Pride and Prejudice. I love it so much. I love the fight scene between him and Hugh Grant. I forget what his name is in the movie. Brilliant. I love it. Coming in at number 8 is Death Comes to Pemberley. This happens 6 years after the events of Pride and Prejudice. They are getting ready for their annual ball, and then someone is murdered on their estate. This is made from a book that P.D. James wrote. This has a great cast, especially Anna Maxwell Martin. It is beautifully shot. The characters suit their Austen personality, but the use of first names and the fact that they're writing to each other, Georgiana and Henry, I wasn't so sure about that. And then there was this great quote from Mrs. Reynolds. She says, "My brother's widow runs a boarding school near Highbury." I thought that was great because that's a nod to Emma, and I loved that they were implying that in the Jane Austen universe that all the novels take place in the same universe. I loved that. Coming in at number 7 is Love and Friendship. This is an adaptation of Lady Susan, so I was curious, why did they choose that title? Maybe to connect it to Sense and Sensibility, Pride and Prejudice, I'm not sure. The voiceover in this makes sense in a movie made from an epistolary novel. I thought that was great. I also liked the titles on the screen, introducing people. In a nod to the novel's format, there's lots of letters, not read in full, of course, being read and written. Sir James Martin is hilarious. He is my favorite character. The scene where we first meet him, I laugh out loud. It is so funny. I thought that it captured the character of Lady Susan and the irony and the humor, and I also liked the soundtrack that they chose to use mostly opera and arias. I thought that was a great choice. Coming in at number 6 is Emma from 1996. This is the Gwyneth Paltrow one. Now, this could be mostly nostalgia, why I love this so much, because again, I watched it when it came out in the dorms, you know, when I was in college, but it has a phenomenal cast. Gwyneth Paltrow, Jeremy Northam, James Cosmo, he plays Mr. Weston. He also plays Gerald Rafferty on the Rebus shows, so that threw me for a minute. Alan Cumming, Sophia Thompson, I love her. Toni Collette, Phillida Law, Ewan McGregor, Polly Walker, Juliet Stevenson, and even Ruth Jones. She plays the Bates' maid, and I think she has one line, but she's the one from Gavin and Stacey. Brilliant. On this rewatch, I noticed that much of the film is outside. I don't know why they made that choice. I thought it was interesting. Emma and Knightley are a great pairing. They have good chemistry. And I like this Emma because she knows her place in society, and she is terrible at reading people, but she's also kind. Mrs. Bates and Mother Bates crack me up in this one. Pork! Treat! I love how she just yells single words at her mom. It was so funny. Okay, now, the way this was filmed was really interesting. They did really interesting transitions where they would start a sentence in one scene and then finish it off in another scene, sometimes by a completely different person. I thought that was really interesting. I liked the voiceovers, and I love that the voiceover at the end is Mrs. Elton. Because of the length, there were some things left out and some of it did feel rushed, but I can't help it. I really enjoy that one. Okay, now, my top 5 spots are pretty fluid. Basically, my favorite is the one that I've just watched. Is kind of what I'm coming down to. But these top 5 are my absolute favorites. I adore these movies. These ones I'm giving A+ because they are just phenomenal. And since I had to do a top 5 ranking, this is what I'm going with. Coming in at number 5 is Persuasion from 1995. Amanda Root and Kieran Hines. Fantastic. I loved how they were completely able to show internal feelings just by the looks on their faces. I think the acting was phenomenal in this one. Coming in at number 4 is Sense and Sensibility from 2008. I love this edition. Gives us some of the backstory kind of right up on screen. This is another Andrew Davies. This one has a great cast. The Mrs. Steele in this one make me laugh. They're so funny. It has a good soundtrack and it's beautifully shot. It really is. And as much as I love the 1995 Sense and Sensibility, the mini-series format allows them to really dive into the story, and that's what I love about this adaptation. Coming in at number 3, and this might surprise people, I don't know, is Pride and Prejudice from 1995. I love it. I do. Colin Firth and Jennifer Eel, fantastic. It is such a good adaptation. I just love it. That the cast is fantastic, the acting is phenomenal. It's just a great, almost basically perfect adaptation, and I love it. Coming in at number 2 is Emma from 2009. I love this miniseries so much. I like the narrative opening. It introduces the characters and the backstory in under 4 minutes. And I love that it focuses in on Emma, Jane Fairfax, and Frank Churchill, and how their stories end up coinciding. There is great chemistry between the 2 leads, Romoli Garai, I'm sorry, I'm completely butchering her name, and Johnny Lee Miller. They are so good. I love the soundtrack in this one. It has a fantastic cast. I really love Michael Gambon. I feel like how he portrays Mr. Woodhouse is perfect. Emma is played perfectly, flawed yet kind. I especially loved how they portrayed her relationship with her father. Johnny Lee Miller plays a fantastic hero, Jane Austen hero. I said that before. And it has great subtle storytelling. So for example, in the scene after Miss Taylor's wedding, Emma is in front of the window looking back into the house, remembering her past, while Knightley can be seen walking toward the house, signaling her future. I think it's brilliant. And then coming in at number 1, at this point in time, my number 1 absolute favorite Jane Austen adaptation is Sense and Sensibility from 1995. Perfection. Everything works. The cast, the soundtrack, the storytelling, the pacing. It's a film, not a miniseries, yet it doesn't feel rushed, and the important moments are allowed to breathe. They show, not tell, which is one of the reasons why I love it. The way that they do scene setups and shots, the scene setups and shots do that really well. Some nice touches I noticed on this rewatch, and when Eleanor is writing one of the letters, you can tell that she's cross-writing it, where when they're done the page, they turn the page 90 degrees and then start writing in between. I love that. And also the coin throwing at the end at the wedding, I thought that that was fantastic. So there you have it. That is my ranking. Now here is my conclusion. Screen adaptations are a different medium. They just are. And so I want to see visual interpretations that enhance the story. I don't expect line for line copies, but I do want an adaptation that captures the essence of the plot and remains true to the story and the characters. In her book, The Genius of Jane Austen, Paula Byrne includes a chapter on Jane Austen in Hollywood. In that chapter, she tells the story of how A.A. Milne wrote a stage version of Pride and Prejudice during World War II. This is a quote. "This is the absolute key to the distinction between adaptations that succeed and those that fail. The test of every line of fresh dialogue is truth to character, not truth to the original text. The characters must always maintain consistency of voice." And I agree with that 100%. Okay, so there you have it. Let me know in the comment section down below, what would be your top 5 Jane Austen adaptations? I would love to know. And do you struggle like I do with actually ranking them and actually having to say this one is my favorite? Okay, that's it for me. And so now you can compare this video to the one that my husband made. I will link it in the cards and in the description box. If you haven't had a chance to see it, watch it because it is really funny. And I will see you for another video soon. Bye.